However, my conclusion in studying this lawsuit was it wasn't just one sick and twisted doctor, it was one sick and twisted organization. Hi babes, welcome back to the What Like It's Hard podcast. I'm your host Jasmine. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is all about USA Gymnastics. I have 6 topics to cover for this episode: the USA Gymnastics history/culture, Larry Nassar / other abusive predators within the organization, Maggie Nichols, how USA Gymnastics handles abuse allegations, legal issues involved, and 6, the outcome of the litigation / impact statements / the impact today. So this is a very jam-packed episode. I'm so excited for you guys to be here and get to know more about this case because it impacted the USA Gymnastics organization and also laws today involving sexual cases, sexual laws, child molestation, child abuse. I just want to warn you guys before you get into this podcast episode that it does contain triggering topics such as sexual abuse, child abuse, mental and physical trauma. So please stop listening if you are triggered by such topics. All right, I got my Starbucks. Grab a Starbucks, grab a tea, get cozy, and let's dive into this episode. Upon my initial exposure to this specific case involving USA Gymnastics, I watched Athlete A on Netflix to learn more. In 2017, the topic went viral on the headlines, and I remember seeing it and thinking that is one sick and twisted doctor that harmed these young women and forever impacted them. However, my conclusion in studying this lawsuit was it wasn't just one sick and twisted doctor, it was one sick and twisted organization. So let's get into my first topic, which is USA Gymnastics history and the culture. Let's start from the beginning. The USA Gymnastics Federation was established in 1963. The purpose for this organization was to basically be responsible for selecting and training national teams for the Olympic Games and world champions. If you look back in the history of gymnastics, in the 50s and 60s, it was mostly older women participating in the gymnastics program. However, in 1976, everything changed because at the age of 14, Nadia Comaneci was the first gymnast to be awarded a perfect score of a 10 at the Olympic Games. Young girls who watched Nadia win the Olympics at age 14 were inspired. That literally instantly clicked the attraction of very young girls to participate in gymnastics, aspire to be an Olympic champion, just like Nadia. Since Nadia was the first Olympic Games gymnast to be awarded a perfect score at the age of 14, you probably wonder who her coach was. The answer to that is Bela Karolyi. Bela Karolyi is a Romanian coach. His coaching career developed the Romanian centralized training system for gymnasts. In the US, coaches were trying to get inspiration or understand how this Romanian girl won the Olympics under Bela Karolyi's coaching style, which is super strict, super intense, and some might say abusive. That just showed what the coaching style would be like in the future. Bela Karolyi and his wife Marta Karolyi actually ended up moving to the US in 1981 because Bela Karolyi would always get into altercations and fights with the officials in Romania. So they ended up settling in Texas. They ended up opening a USA Gymnastics training facility called the Karolyi Ranch. I'll explain later in the episode how the Karolyi Ranch had a significant importance in this Larry Nassar case in the USA Gymnastics sexual abuse allegations. Like I said, under the Romanian coaching style, the young athletes were groomed to deny and doubt their own feelings. Like, for example, if their ankle hurt, the coaches would be like, "You're not in pain. Like, that's not true." Or if they were hungry, the coaches would be like, "You're not hungry. You're fat. You're a pig." Like, very vulgar language and very very strict and very like mentally altering. Like, it would alter your feelings in your mind, which would ultimately be a leading factor as to why the young women never really came out with the sexual abuse allegations. A lot of them felt like, they knew that it was wrong, but they felt like, oh, I'm just imagining it, or it's not a big deal, or this is a very well-respected doctor, like, I'm lucky to even be here. So it was very mentally traumatizing, especially since they were young girls. It was hard for them to speak up and say something. Let's get into Steve Penny, which is also another leading role in this case. Steve Penny actually worked in the marketing side of USA Gymnastics initially. Penny was promoted to USA Gymnastics president in April of 2005. So since he had a background in marketing, he kind of made the organization, as a brand of like wholesome young girls. They got a lot of sponsorships. He basically promoted them with a wholesome image, like USA Gymnastics is like perfect, basically. That kind of ties into when allegations were reported to him. He claimed he handled it internally. He didn't want the image to be destroyed because then they would lose sponsorships and money. So that was just his, idea in his mind of what he wanted ultimately. And that was so wrong on many levels. But he was the one running the organization. He was the president. And it's just crazy to me to think how an adult would act that way, especially running an organization with beautiful, strong young girls, and they were being abused, and he just didn't do the right thing. Okay, so that's a gist of the USA Gymnastics history and the culture. Let's get to the second topic, Larry Nassar and other abusive predators within the organization. So my initial thought was Larry Nassar was the only sick, abusive person in the organization, but that was so false. The more I dug into it, the more I realized other coaches were abusive, other staff members in the USA Gymnastics organization were super abusive to these girls, and it was just terrible to discover that. Larry Nassar, he was a former osteopathic physician and former professor at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. And for 18 years, he was the team doctor of the U.S. Women's National Gymnastics team, which gave him access to all of these young, strong, beautiful women and, sexually assaulted them. It's disturbing. But also at his time working at MSU, he was abusing young girls at MSU. So his sexual assaults did not just occur in the gymnastics organization, it also occurred outside of it. Girls who saw him at MSU were receiving the same sexual assaults as girls at the USA Gymnastics. So he pretty much did this his whole career, which is crazy that for 18 years, it took 18 years for him to get what he deserved, basically. As I mentioned before, the coaching style of USA Gymnastics, the girls were trained to be obedient. They were trained to basically look up to their coaches, their doctors, pretty much anybody who was in that organization as an adult. And Larry Nassar, as the doctor, girls described him as the quote unquote nice guy, since all the coaches and other staff were like super harsh and mean. And Larry was just the nice guy. He would give the girls candy, snacks, treat them nicely. He kind of like psychologically manipulated them. So when he did do the sexual assaults to these girls, they were just unsure of what to do. And remember, these girls are so young, even adults who have been through sexual abuse, it could be hard for them to even come out and say something for a number of reasons. So just imagine these young girls, 14 years old, and an adult did this to them, a respected doctor did this to them. Like, it would be so hard for them to say something. Which brings me to topic 3 of Maggie Nichols. So Maggie Nichols was the first gymnast to report Nassar from his abuse at the ranch. The Caroli Ranch was a place where Larry Nassar committed a lot of sexual abuse to these kids. Maggie was the first to say something. She asked her fellow gymnast, Allie Raisman, does Larry do this to you? Is this normal? He did this to me. I don't know what to do. And so their coach at the time overheard them speaking, and her coach called Maggie's mom and said, "Hey, I heard Maggie say that Larry Nassar, touched her inappropriately and she felt violated." So then Maggie's mom called immediately the USA Gymnastics and reported a concern. Larry Nassar touched my daughter inappropriately. Something needs to be done. So then Steve Penny called Maggie's mom and said, "I heard you have a concern." Maggie's mom said, "I don't have a concern. What happened is my daughter was sexually molested. That's more than a concern." So Steve Penny said, "Okay, don't worry about it. We'll have an investigation." Which we all know was a cover-up. For a very long time, they were under the impression an investigation is going on, and within that time, Maggie was training to be in the Olympics. She wanted to be on the Olympics team so bad. She was very good. She did suffer a knee injury, but she came back very strong. And that whole time, Steve treated her so badly, basically controlled her. Simone Biles was doing a commercial and she wanted Maggie to be in it, and Steve said no, she can't be in the commercial. He didn't want her in any media. And the worst part was when it came time to select the team for the Olympics, Maggie was not chosen, even though her score was very good and higher than some of the girls who were chosen, and she wasn't even chosen as an alternate. So clearly he was discriminatory towards her because he didn't want anything to get out into the media. He didn't want her to say anything to the press and public. He was very fearful. It was just disgusting how he treated her. She just gave up her dreams of being in the Olympics. She just gave up because of that, which is very unfortunate. She's doing very well now. I follow her on Instagram. She's doing so well. Let's go to topic 4, how USA Gymnastics handles abuse allegations. Steve Penny dropped the allegations and did not report them to the police because he handled them as a hearsay situation. For years and years and years, these allegations were not reported properly and or handled properly. A quote from Simone Biles is, "There are many reasons that I have been reluctant to share my story, but I now know it was not my fault." The culture of the USA Gymnastics organization has drilled into these girls that a lot of things are their fault. Like, the reason they're not the perfect weight, it's their fault. Or the reason why, they broke their leg, it's their fault. Like, that's what they drilled into these girls. But for this whole scandal and case, it's now okay to share what has happened to you. It's now okay to report something that you feel is wrong. I mean, it's always been okay, but now it's seen as a more appropriate thing to do in the organization. The Indianapolis Star made a report and it showed emails with attempts from the USA Gymnastics organization, Steve Penny, to cover up Nassar's quote-unquote therapy techniques on at least 2 occasions in 2015. That year, Nassar stopped working for the USA Gymnastics, which is kind of sketchy to begin with. It's just a whole behind-the-scenes inappropriate way to handle abuse. So he continued to abuse girls and young women for many years to come after that. All right, let's get into topic 5, the legal issues involved. There have been a number of people charged in this case, not only Larry Nassar, for a number of legal issues. For example, obviously, Larry Nassar admitted to be guilty to federal child pornography, criminal sexual conduct, and others have been charged with lying to the cops, tampering with evidence, human trafficking, and much more. The legal issues in this case have been a number of issues, not just sexual abuse. That's just a general idea of what we're dealing with here. I encourage you to do more research per each subject and per each person charged, but I want to get to the final topic 6, which is the outcome of the litigation / impact statements / impact today. A case like this, of course, there are going to be victim impact statements, and in this specific case, over 100 women made an impact statement. Let's quickly go over what is an impact statement. It gives an opportunity to express in your own words what you, your family, and others close to you have experienced as a result of the crime. It gives victims of crime a voice in the criminal justice system, and it allows victims to explain to the court and the offender in their own words how the crime has affected them. So, like I said, over 100 girls spoke directly to Larry Nassar, how what he did affected them, and it also gives the girls closure, somewhat of a closure to what happened, and to be able to see him be served with, doing those sexual abuses to them and just impacting their life, because many of these women, that's their first exposure to anything sexual, which he took that away from them. Ultimately, the outcome of the litigation is Larry Nassar is serving 100 to 175 years in prison, and he's currently in a high security federal prison after he was convicted of multiple sex crimes against young gymnasts in Michigan. He was sentenced by 3 separate courts on charges of child pornography, sexual assault of a minor, and tampering with evidence. The impact that this case had today is that some states have created a quote-unquote look-back window, which the statute of limitations, the period of time which you have to report something, it no longer applies. So it allows victims to bring claims forward against abusers no matter how long ago the abuse occurred. More importantly, Vermont specifically has moved to eliminate the statute of limitations altogether, and a lot of people say that that is one of the strongest child abuse law reforms in the country, which is so amazing. The legal changes to acknowledge that in many cases, it can take years for a victim of childhood sexual abuse to realize that they were abused, or to come to terms with their abuse, or even to decide to seek justice. The reality of many victims, they might not even realize they were abused because, like I said, they're so young and that was their first exposure to anything sexual. Of course, they might be too scared to come forward, and that echoed in many of the impact statements. Another thing that echoed in the impact statements was the culture of the USA Gymnastics, that the organization enabled the abuse by those in power. That is today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. This is just a gist of this case. I just encourage you to watch Athlete A on Netflix. There are several books that directly relate to this case, so I have put that on my blog. You can check out my blog, www.whatlikeitshardpodcast.com, and in this episode post I include the movie. You can click on my link that I have in there and you can watch it on Netflix. I have several books about the case and a lot of references, so thank you so much for watching. I am so excited for next month's lineup. I will keep you up to date. Leave a review and let me know how you loved this episode. I'll talk to you soon.